Let me say something that might sting a little, but it's the truth most men need to hear. Women don't regret disrespecting you because you argue, explain yourself, or demand respect. We regret it when you go quiet, grounded, and emotionally unavailable without becoming bitter or angry. That's the part men usually get wrong. When a woman disrespects a man, she's not always trying to hurt him. Most of the time, she's testing the boundaries of his self-respect. She's watching to see if he folds, reacts emotionally, overexplains, or tries to win her approval back. And the moment he does, something shifts inside her. Not consciously, but deeply. She stops seeing him as centered. She stops feeling the tension, the polarity, the quiet strength. From a woman's perspective, nothing kills attraction faster than a man who reacts instead of responds. Stoicism isn't about being cold or distant. It's about emotional control, self-respect, and not chasing validation. And when a man moves this way, silently, calmly, without trying to prove anything, it does something powerful to a woman's mind. She starts replaying her behavior. She starts questioning her assumptions. She starts wondering why he didn't react the way other men do. That's when regret creeps in, not because he punished her, not because he manipulated her, but because he showed, without words, that he values himself more than her approval. I end this video. I'm not here to bash women or tell men to play games. I'm here to tell you what actually happens inside a woman when a man stops engaging emotionally and starts moving with quiet self-respect. These are the silent moves men make that don't look impressive on the surface, but they get deep. And yes, when done right, they make women rethink their disrespect fast. Let me pull the curtain back and show you what we really respond to. 1. When you stop explaining yourself, we start questioning ourselves. Let me be very honest with you as a woman. The moment a man stops explaining himself after being disrespected, something uncomfortable starts happening inside a woman's mind. And most men have no idea how powerful that moment really is. When a woman disrespects you, she's usually expecting one of two things. Either you'll defend yourself and try to prove your worth, or you'll react emotionally and give her something to push against. Both reactions keep her in control of the emotional frame. She may not think about it consciously, but she feels it. Now let me tell you what hits different. You hear something disrespectful. Maybe it's dismissive. Maybe it's sarcastic. Maybe it's her speaking to you like you're beneath her. And instead of launching into a speech, instead of trying to explain your intentions, instead of correcting her tone, you go quiet. Not angry. Not cold. Just calm and firm. Your energy changes. You stop justifying yourself. You stop trying to be understood. You don't chase clarity. You don't ask her to see your side. From a woman's perspective, that silence is loud. I've been on the other side of this. A man I was talking to made an effort, planned something thoughtful, and I brushed it off carelessly. I expected him to push back playfully or explain why it mattered. Instead, he simply nodded, stayed polite, and pulled back. No argument. No lecture. Just distance. That moment stuck with me because now I was left alone with my own behavior. I replayed what I said. I replayed my tone. I started wondering if I crossed a line. And the worst part was this: he didn't give me a chance to fix it immediately. I had to sit with the feeling that I might have disrespected a man who knew his value. When you stop explaining yourself, you force a woman to fill in the gaps herself. And women are very good at overthinking silence. We ask ourselves questions men never realize we're asking. Did I misjudge him? Did I assume too much? Why didn't he fight to be understood? Why does it feel like he doesn't need my approval? That's when regret begins, not loud regret. Quiet regret, because a man who doesn't explain himself after disrespect sends a clear message without saying a word. He says, I know who I am. I don't need to convince you. And if you don't see it, that's not my problem. That kind of self-respect doesn't make a woman angry. It makes her think. And thinking is where everything changes. 2. Silence after disrespect hits louder than any argument. Let me tell you something most women won't say out loud, but almost all of us feel when a man argues after being disrespected. It doesn't make him stronger in our eyes. It actually makes him easier to read, easier to predict, and easier to control emotionally. Arguments give us noise. Silence gives us space. And space is where our minds start working against us. From a woman's perspective, silence is uncomfortable when it comes from a man who is emotionally stable. Not the kind of silence that sulks or tries to punish, but the kind that says, I'm not giving this energy anymore. When you go quiet after disrespect, we notice immediately. The tone of the dynamic changes. You're still present, still respectful, but something is missing. The emotional access we had to you is suddenly gone. And that absence feels heavier than any heated conversation. Here's what starts happening internally. We replay the moment. Not just what was said, but how it landed. We start wondering if we crossed a line we didn't mean to cross. We ask ourselves why you didn't push back, why you didn't try to fix it, why you didn't fight to be understood. And those questions don't go away easily. Silence removes our ability to justify ourselves. If you argue, we can say you're overreacting. If you raise your voice, we can say you're emotional. If you explain too much, we can say you're insecure. But when you stay quiet and pull your energy back calmly, there's nothing to label you with. All we're left with is our own behavior. That's where regret starts forming, not because we feel attacked, but because we feel exposed. Silence acts like a mirror. It reflects our actions back to us without commentary. And that forces self-awareness, whether we like it or not. This is why silence feels so heavy to women. It creates emotional contrast. One moment you were open, present, and engaged. The next, you're still calm, but emotionally unavailable. That contrast makes us feel the shift deeply, and here's the key part men need to understand. Silence only works when it's rooted in self-respect, not manipulation. Women can sense the difference. If your silence is fake, it feels childish. If it's genuine, it feels powerful. From our side, it feels like losing access to a man who knows his worth. And that loss lingers far longer than any argument ever could. 3. Emotional control is what separates you from every other man. If there's one thing women notice instantly, it's how a man handles his emotions when things don't go his way. You might think women want big reactions, passion, or emotional intensity. Some do at first. But what makes a man stand out long-term is emotional control. And I don't mean suppressing how you feel. I mean being able to feel it without letting it run you. From a woman's perspective, disrespect often doesn't come out of nowhere. It usually shows up when we sense emotional imbalance. When a man seems overly eager, overly reactive, or too invested in our approval, something shifts inside us. We start testing. We push. We say things we wouldn't say to a man we fully respect. That's not pride. That's instinct. A man who reacts emotionally gives us information. It tells us he's thrown off. It tells us he's trying to regain control. And once we sense that, the dynamic tilts. Now look at the opposite. A man hears something disrespectful and doesn't flinch. His tone stays steady. His body language stays relaxed. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't get defensive. He doesn't rush to explain himself. From our side, that lands hard because emotional control signals something deeper than confidence. It signals inner stability. It tells us you're not governed by our moods, our words, or our approval. And that's rare. Here's the part most men don't realize. When you stay composed, it creates emotional conflict in a woman. She expects you to react. When you don't, she starts questioning her position. She feels the power shift, even if she can't explain it. That's where regret begins to form. Not regret because she feels bad immediately, but regret because she realizes she may have underestimated you. And women hate underestimating a man who turns out to be grounded and self-contained. Emotional control also removes drama. And drama is how women often justify disrespect. Without drama, there's no excuse, no distraction, no emotional fog. Just clarity. From a woman's perspective, a man who remains calm under pressure feels safe, mature, and quietly dominant. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just centered. And once a woman sees that in you, it's very hard for her to unsee it. 4. Pulling back calmly forces us to face our own behavior. This is where a lot of men get confused, so let me explain it clearly. From a woman's side. Pulling back does not mean disappearing, ghosting, or acting cold out of spite. When a man does that, it feels reactive, and women can tell. What actually creates impact is pulling back calmly, without resentment, without explanation, and without drama. From our perspective, that kind of pullback feels like a quiet line being drawn. You're still polite. You're still respectful. But the emotional closeness we had access to is no longer there. And that shift forces us to slow down and look inward. Most women are used to men either tolerating disrespect or confronting it emotionally. Both keep the woman in control of the emotional dynamic. Calm withdrawal does the opposite. It removes the emotional charge completely, and when there's no charge, there's nothing to react to. That's when a woman starts facing her own behavior. Not because you told her to, but because the dynamic changed. She feels the absence of something she assumed would always be there. Your attention. Your warmth. Your availability. Here's what happens internally. She starts comparing. She thinks about how other men would have reacted. How most men would have argued, begged, or tried to smooth things over just to keep access. And then she notices that you didn't do any of that. That contrast creates respect, not instant attraction. Not immediate apologies. But respect, and respect is the foundation of regret, because now she sees that she treated a man casually who doesn't move casually. She realizes that you didn't need to raise your voice to protect your self-worth. You simply adjusted your presence from a woman's perspective that feels mature. It feels grounded. And it feels slightly unsettling because it means she no longer controls the pace or the emotional tone. Calm pullback is powerful because it removes excuses. There's no fight to blame. No argument to hide behind. Just a clear consequence, and that consequence makes us think long after the moment has passed. 5. Not seeking closure is a power most men never use. This is where a lot of men unknowingly give away their power. After disrespect, men often want clarity. They want explanations, apologies, reassurance, or some kind of emotional resolution. That urge is understandable. But from a woman's perspective, a man who doesn't need closure feels emotionally complete. And that's rare when you don't ask why she said what she said, or push for an apology, or try to clear the air. It sends a very strong message. It says you trust your own judgment enough to move forward without her validating your feelings. From our side, that's unsettling because now the situation isn't wrapped up neatly. There's no emotional bow on it. There's no moment where we get to explain ourselves and feel absolved. We're left with loose ends, and women don't sit comfortably with emotional loose ends. That's when the questions start. Did I push too far? Did I misread him? Why doesn't he need me to explain myself? Those questions stay longer than any conversation would have. Not seeking closure doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about your peace more than forcing understanding. And women feel the difference immediately. From a woman's perspective, a man who can walk away emotionally without answers feels grounded and self-directed. He's not driven by anxiety. He's not seeking permission to move on. He's simply choosing himself, and that choice creates regret because now she has to sit with the awareness that she may have disrespected a man who didn't need her to feel whole. That realization is uncomfortable, but it's also deeply impactful. Silence, distance, and lack of closure create a space where reflection happens naturally. Not because you demanded it, but because you allowed it, and that's why not seeking closure is one of the strongest silent moves a man can make. She regrets it when she realizes she lost access to a man who knew his worth and didn't need to prove it. From a woman's perspective, the men who stay calm, grounded, and self-respecting leave the deepest impression. Not because they were loud. Not because they tried to control the situation. But because they controlled themselves. If any part of this made you reflect on how you've handled disrespect in the past, that's a good thing. Growth starts with awareness. And the moment you stop reacting and start responding, everything changes. I want to hear from you. Have you ever stayed calm when you were disrespected and watched the dynamic shift? Or have you had a moment where you wish you'd handled things differently? Share your experience in the comments. I read them and I engage because real conversations matter here, and remember this. A man who walks away with dignity is never forgotten. Not by the woman who underestimated him. Not by the men he becomes after choosing self-respect. That's where real power lives.